During the mock-up, I and others offered an amendment to require the President to annually
on this vote,
report
the
on
ayes
the
are 50, the nays are
implementation
49,
and
3/5 of the Senate duly
Columbia
chosen
Labor
and
Action
sworn.
Plan.
Not having
I
voted in
understand
the
that this type
affirmative,
of
the
reporting
motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President, I enter a motion to reconsider the vote by which cloture was not invoked.
Motion is entered.
Mr. President, I move to ask unanimous consent that we now proceed to pre-morning business. Senators allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes each.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to calendar number 290 and be in executive session. And that the nomination be confirmed. Motion to reconsider be considered made, laid on the table. There be no any action or debate. Any statements relating to this matter be placed in the record at the appropriate place as if given, and the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I understand there's a bill at the desk due for its first reading.
The clerk will read the bill for the first time.
H.R. 2681, an act to provide additional time for the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency to issue achievable standards for cement manufacturing facilities and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I now ask for a second reading in order to place the bill on the calendar under Rule Rule 14. But under that, because of that, I object to my own request.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President,
The bill will be read the second time on the next legislative day.
Great, thank you. I ask unanimous consent the Senate completes its business day. The Senate adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, October 12th of this year. Following the prayer and the pledge, journal proceedings be approved to date. The morning hour be deemed expired. The time for 2 leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. Following any leader remarks, the Senate begin consideration H.R. 3080, H.R. 3079, H.R. 3078. That there be 12 hours debate equally divided, controlled between the 2 leaders of the designees. Senators Baucus controlling 20 minutes, Senator Brown of Ohio, and senators each controlling an hour of the majority time. All other provisions of the previous order remain in effect. And finally, the Senate recess from 12:30 to 2:15 for our weekly caucus meetings.
Without objection, the Senate returns to legislative session. Without objection, the request is granted.
Mr. President, we'll consider the 3 free trade agreements tomorrow. We expect complete action on these bills sometime tomorrow. If everyone uses their time, it's quite obvious it'll be a late day, but maybe people will get tired of talking, and we can finish this earlier. We have work to complete on Thursday. I've talked to the Republican leader about the path forward, and I think it would be we can get more done this week and have really a good next week working on appropriation bills. If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that adjourn under the previous order.
The Senate stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow.
So the Senate has gavelled out. Members held a procedural vote on Senator Reid's version of President Obama's jobs plan. It failed 50 to 49, with 60 votes needed to move forward. That version included a 5.6% surtax on households earning more than $1 million a year. The money raised by that surtax would have paid for the jobs proposal that would go into effect in 2013. The Chamber also passed a measure that allows sanctions against China if the Treasury Department finds that that country is manipulating the price of its currency. The vote there was 63 to 35. And tomorrow, senators debate free trade agreements for Colombia, Panama, and South Korea. You can follow the Senate live here on C-SPAN 2 when members gavel back in.
It's a fact-based story on a topic of your choosing. Every good story has a good beginning, a solid middle, and a strong ending.
What do you think we should do for this year's C-SPAN Student Cam competition? You don't need the best video equipment to have a winning project. Today, cell phones and flip cams do a great job of capturing video. If you don't have access to better video equipment, don't let that stop you. And if you need a little bit more help, go to studentcams.org.
This process can be confusing at first, but C-SPAN will help you stay organized. I find it useful to read the rules very carefully and then make a checklist of what you need to do. But don't worry, the process becomes clear once you get started.
Another great thing about the C-SPAN documentary is that you can work alone on the project or you can work in teams. For example, if you're a good writer but not very handy with a camera, then get a friend to help out. Not only will you both learn something, but you'll increase your chances of winning.
You don't need to be an expert at video production or interviewing to make this work. You can use your parents, other students, teachers, and C-SPAN as resources for you along the way. This process is both fun and extremely rewarding. With a little bit of effort, anyone can do this.
President Obama met with his Council on Jobs and Competitiveness in Pittsburgh, where he convened the meeting and provided opening remarks. To the president's right is General Electric CEO Jeffrey Immelt, the chairman of the President's Jobs Council. The council has called for greater spending on infrastructure, less restrictive regulations, and a more business-friendly tax system. The president's remarks are 10 minutes.
Well, let me just make a few remarks up front, and then really what I want to do is hear from all of you. First of all, I had a chance to read the full report last night, and I think it's outstanding. I think you guys did extraordinary work. Jeff, I want to thank you for your leadership on guiding this whole process. I think you have been steady and focused on how can we make sure that we're creating an economy that not only deals with the immediate problem of putting people back to work, but also how do we create a foundation for long-term opportunity for all people and a growth agenda that is going to make sure that businesses are created here, that businesses stay here, and that they prosper here. As I look at the introduction of the report, the quote that stands out, "We need a sense of urgency and a bias for action," is something that I think we all feel acutely. And the fact that you've been able to organize around 5 key steps that I think you'd be the first to acknowledge isn't all that needs to be done, but are key areas where we should be able to generate some strong bipartisan agreement and get action going quickly, I think makes it really extraordinary. A couple of things I'll just remark on in terms of the general context. As you pointed out, I think at the beginning of this year, when we started the Jobs Council, I think all of us felt fairly confident that the economy could grow quickly enough that we could start bringing the unemployment rate down, even if it wasn't moving as quickly as we might like. But generally, the blue chip projections were somewhere between 3% and 4% growth. We have had a very tough string of events over the course of the last 10 months. You had the Arab Spring, which shot up oil prices far higher than any of us anticipated. You've got the tsunami in Japan, which affected supply lines globally. You had, most prominently, the situation in Europe, which has created great uncertainty for businesses across the board. And then, unfortunately, Washington got involved in a self-inflicted wound with the debt ceiling fiasco. And all those things, I think, led to both consumers and businesses taking a big step backwards and saying, we are just not sure where this thing is going. As a consequence, projections now in terms of growth are significantly lower than they were. And the situation in Europe in particular is one in which we're spending a lot of energy talking to our counterparts across the Atlantic, trying to make sure that they handle this in a way that stabilizes the economic situation in the coming months. So we've had a string of events that have darkened the outlook, and that makes the actions that are being recommended by the Jobs Council that much more important, because these are areas where we actually have control of the situation. We could do these things, and there's no doubt about the fact that it would have a significant market impact on job growth right now. Couple of comments, and then what I want to do is, I think, hear directly from, I think we've got some people who want to remark on each of the various categories. First of all, with respect to infrastructure, the Council here is quoted as saying, if there is one thing that Washington should be able to agree on, rebuilding our infrastructure should be one. I mean, when you've got the AFL and the Chamber of Commerce agreeing on anything, that's a sign that it's a good idea. I think you document as well as anybody has the incredible opportunities at a time when contractors are begging for work, which means they're willing to come in on time, under budget. You've got millions of construction workers who've been laid off as a consequence of the housing bubble going bust, who are ready to get on the job. You've got interest rates never been lower, and you've got this crying need, and as you point out in the report, this is a twofer. This is one where we can not only get immediate job growth, but it also lays the foundation for long-term productivity and efficiencies that will make a difference for every company represented around this table. So the American Jobs Act, the jobs plan that I put forward before Congress, obviously has a very significant infrastructure component. It incorporates a lot of the ideas that were contained in this bill, because in the Job Council report, because one of the things that you mentioned was not only do we need the infrastructure, we have to streamline the approval process so that we can actually get these projects moving more quickly than they have in the past. And so we've already identified, Gene, is it 11 or 14? 14. We've already identified 14 high-priority projects in which the permitting process has been significantly expedited. And we're doing that through administrative action. Our goal is, if this serves as an effective model for us being able to move those 14 quickly, that we can then replicate that across the board, and the significant investment that was made could have a much more rapid impact than what we've seen before. With respect to the next area, which is support for small business and emphasizing high-growth firms. Many of the recommendations that you gave, we've already been trying to implement. We have a task force that, along with Select USA, has been looking at, for example, how can we move forward on easing the burdens and allowing IPOs to move more quickly. Are there regulatory constraints on small businesses as they move forward that we can start eliminating? So where we can act administratively, we've tried to do so. In some areas, we might require some additional legislation. For example, on the high-skill immigration area, that's not something that we can necessarily do on our own. We can expedite some of the visas that are already in place and try to streamline that process to make it move faster. We may need some legislative help on that area. With respect to the National Investment Initiative, I know that we've, if I'm not mistaken, some of the Job Council already had a chance to meet with the Secretary of State to figure out how we can deal with visas and travel promotion. There are other areas where we think that bringing together an interagency approach and making sure that we are knocking down any barriers that are out there for direct investment here in the United States and job creation, that we're going to prioritize those. And I welcome the ideas that have already been put in place. With respect to regulatory review, review. As you know, we are already in the process of a look back that has identified billions of dollars in potential savings, eliminating paperwork, but we want to pursue some of the additional ideas that have been put forward. And obviously, with respect to skills and improving the capacity of our workforce to get the jobs of the future, that's something that spans both our education department as well as our Department of Labor. And I know that Hilda, Arnie Duncan, and others are working aggressively on trying to implement many of the ideas that you put forward. So I guess the bottom line is this. Jeff, as you pointed out, some of the recommendations contained in the Job Council require legislative action. And these days, things don't move as quickly through Congress as we would like. But there are certain ideas that are contained in this Jobs Council report that historically have received bipartisan support, and the election is 14 months away or 13 months away. We can't wait until another election before we start acting on some of those ideas. The American Jobs Act that I'm putting forward obviously contains many ideas like infrastructure investment that should be pretty straightforward, and our hope is that we're able to get those passed in the next couple of months. But we're not going to wait for Congress. So my instruction to Jeff and Jean and Valerie and all the advisors who are sitting around the table is scour this report, identify all those areas in which we can act administratively without additional congressional authorization, and just get it done. And we've already been able to get a significant number of your recommendations implemented, but we want to do more. We will have a very vigorous follow-up process to make sure that anything that's within our authority to do as an administration, we start doing immediately, and we don't wait for Congress, because the American people can't afford to wait. They need help right now. All right?
Great.
We're planning live coverage in about an hour from now at 10 p.m. Eastern Time here on C-SPAN 2 of the spin room that's happening after the Republican debate being held at Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire. The debate tonight is focusing on the economy, and the spin room is where the candidates and their campaign advisors speak to reporters after the debate. So we'll have that live for you here on C-SPAN 2 and also at cspan.org at 10 p.m. Eastern. The vote in the Senate to move forward and failed with 48 no votes. 2 Democrats voted with all of the Republicans in voting no. They were Senators Ben Nelson and John Tester. 50 Democrats voted in favor, but it was not enough for the 60 votes needed to overcome a Republican filibuster. Before the vote, President Obama was in Pittsburgh this afternoon, saying if the Senate does not pass the whole jobs package, we're going to break it up into different parts.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please have a seat. Have a seat. It is great to be back in Pittsburgh. And it is wonderful to be here at IBEW Local 5. I had a chance to take a tour of your facilities where you're training workers with the skills they need to compete for good jobs. And I see some of the guys that I met on the tour, both the instructors and the students who are here. And it's an example of how, if we get a good collaboration between business and labor and academia, that there's no reason why we cannot continue to have the best trained workers in the world. And that's got to be one of our best priorities. So I'm here to talk about how we can create new jobs, particularly jobs doing what you do best, and that's rebuilding America. I brought some folks along with me as well. We got members of my cabinet and my administration. We've got your mayor, Luke Ravenstahl is here. Where's Luke? Right here. Your county executive, Dan Honorado, is here. And one of my dearest friends, who I stole from the Steelers to serve as the United States Ambassador to Ireland, Dan Rooney's in the house. Congratulations, Steelers. You guys did a little better than my Bears last night. I've also brought a group of leaders with a wide range of new ideas about how we can help companies hire and grow. And we call them our White House Jobs Council. They come from some of the most successful businesses in the country: GE, Southwest, Intel. They come from labor. We've got Rich Trumka on here from the AFL-CIO. We've got universities and people across the board who are intimately involved in growing companies, venture capitalists. Most importantly, they come from outside of Washington. And I told them when we formed this council, I want to hear smart, forward-thinking ideas that will help our economy and our workers adapt to changing times. And together they've done some extraordinary work to make those ideas happen. So I just want to personally thank every single one of the Job Council members for the great work that they're doing. And they issued a jobs report today. We're implementing a bunch of their ideas. It's going to make a difference all across the country. So thank you very much. Well, one of our focuses today was on entrepreneurship. And we did this because the story of America's success is written by America's entrepreneurs. Men and women who took a chance on a dream and they turned that dream into a business and somehow changed the world. And we just lost one of our greatest entrepreneurs and a friend, Steve Jobs, last week. And to see the outpouring of support for him and his legacy tells a story about what America's all about. We like to make things, create things, new products, new services that change people's lives. And that's what people strive to do every day in this country. Now, most of the time, people's dreams are simple. Startups and storefronts on Main Street that let folks earn enough to support their family and make a contribution to their community. And sometimes their dreams take off, and those startups become companies like Apple or FedEx or Ford, companies that end up hiring and employing hundreds of thousands of Americans and giving rise to entire new industries. And that spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation is how we became the world's leading economic power. And it's what constantly rejuvenates our economy. So entrepreneurship is how we're going to create new jobs in the future. And I'm proud to say that just last month, Pittsburgh won a federal grant to promote entrepreneurship and job creation by expanding your already successful energy and healthcare industries in underserved parts of this city. And so we're very excited about what Pittsburgh's doing here. Today, my Job Council laid out new actions we can take together, the private sector and government, to help unleash a new era of entrepreneurship in America that will grow the economy and create jobs and strengthen our ability to compete with the rest of the world. But even as we help to fuel the next big American industry, we also understand that people are out of work right now. They need help right now. So everything that we talked about with respect to the Job Council is going to help America become more competitive, help entrepreneurs create more jobs, lay the foundation for long-term sustainable growth. But right now, our economy needs a jolt. Right now. And today, the Senate of the United States has a chance to do something about jobs right now by voting for the American Jobs Act. Now, this is a moment of truth for the U.S. Senate. In front of them is a bill, a jobs bill, that independent economists have said would grow this economy and put people back to work. This is not my opinion. It's not my administration's opinion. This is people whose job it is for a living to analyze and evaluate what kind of impact certain policies would have. They've said this could grow the economy significantly and put significant numbers of Americans back to work. And no other jobs plan has that kind of support from economists. No plan from Congress, no plan from anybody. It's a jobs bill with the kind of proposals that Democrats and Republicans have traditionally supported. It's a jobs bill that is entirely paid for by asking those of us who've been most fortunate, who've been incredibly blessed here in America, to contribute a little more to the country that contributed so much to our success. Today is the day when every American will find out exactly where their senator stands on this jobs bill. Republicans say that one of the most important things we can do is cut taxes. Then they should be for this plan. This jobs bill would cut taxes for virtually every worker and small business in America. Every single one. If you're a small business owner that hires new workers or raises wages, you will get another tax cut. If you hire a veteran, you get a tax cut. People who have served overseas should not have to fight for a job when they come home. This jobs bill encourages small business owners and entrepreneurs to expand and to hire. The Senate should pass it today. Hundreds of thousands of teachers and firefighters and police officers have been laid off because of state budget cuts. I'm sure, Luke, you're seeing it here in Pittsburgh. You're having to figure out how do we make sure that we keep our teachers in the classroom. The Jobs Council is uniform in believing that the most important thing for our competitiveness long term is making sure our education system is producing outstanding young people who are ready to go to work. So this jobs bill that the Senate is debating today would put a lot of these men and women back to work right now, and it'll prevent a lot more from losing their jobs. So folks should ask their senators, why would you consider voting against putting teachers and police officers back to work? Ask them what's wrong with having folks who have made millions or billions of dollars to pay a little more, nothing punitive, just going back to the kinds of tax rates that used to exist under President Clinton, so that our kids can get the education they deserve. There are more than 1 million laid-off construction workers who could be repairing our roads and bridges and modernizing our schools right now. Right now. That's no surprise to you. Pittsburgh has a lot of bridges. Has about 300 of them. Did you know that more than a quarter of the bridges in this state are rated structurally deficient? Structurally deficient. That's a fancy way of saying they need to be fixed. There are nearly 6,000 bridges in Pennsylvania alone that local construction workers could be rebuilding right now. The average age of bridges around Pittsburgh is 54 years old. So we're still benefiting from the investments, the work that was done by our grandparents to make this a more successful, more competitive economy. Here in Pittsburgh, 54 years old, the average age of these bridges, 13 years older than the national average. The Hulton Bridge over Oakmont was built more than 100 years ago. There are pieces of it that are flaking off. How much longer are we going to wait to put people back to work rebuilding bridges like that? This jobs bill will give local contractors and local construction workers the chance to get back to work rebuilding America. Why would any senator say no to that? In line with the recommendations of my Jobs Council, my administration's cutting red tape, we're expediting several major construction projects all across the country to launch them faster and more efficiently. We want to streamline the process, the permitting process, just get those things moving. So we're doing our job, trying to expedite the process. Now it's time for Congress to do their job. The Senate should vote for this jobs bill today. It should not wait. It should get it done. Now, a lot of folks in Congress have said they won't support any new spending that's not paid for. And I think that's important. We've got to make sure we're living within our means so that we can make the vital investments in our future. That's why I signed into law $1 trillion in spending cuts over the summer. And we'll find more places to cut those things that we don't need. We can't afford everything. We've got to make choices. We've got to prioritize. Programs that aren't working, that aren't giving us a good bang for the buck, that aren't helping to grow the economy, that aren't putting people back to work, we're going to have to trim those back. So we're willing to make tough choices. And the American people, they're already tightening their belts. They understand what it's all about to make tough choices. But if we want to create jobs and close the deficit, then we can't just cut our way out of the problem. We're also going to have to ask the wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share. If they don't, we only have three other choices. We can either increase the deficit, or we can ask the middle class to pay more at a time when they're just barely getting by, haven't seen their wages or incomes go up at all, in fact, have gone down over the last decade, or we can just sit back and do nothing. And I'm not willing to accept any of those three options. You know, whenever I talk about revenue, you know, people start complaining about, well, is he engaging in class warfare? Why is he going after the wealthiest? Look, you know, because I've been fortunate and people bought a bunch of my books, I'm in that category now. And in a perfect world with unlimited resources, nobody'd have to pay any taxes. But that's not the world we live in. We live in a world where we've got to make choices. So the question we have to ask ourselves as a society, as a country, is would you rather keep taxes exactly as they are for those of us who benefited most from this country? Tax breaks that we don't need and weren't even asking for. Or do we want construction workers and electrical workers to have jobs rebuilding our roads and our bridges and our schools? Would we rather maintain these tax breaks for the wealthiest few, or should we give tax cuts to the entrepreneurs who might need it to start that business, launch that new idea that they've got? Or tax breaks to middle-class families who are likely to spend this money now and get the economy moving again? This is a matter of priorities, and it's a matter of shared sacrifice. And by the way, if you ask most wealthy Americans, they'll tell you they're willing to do more. They're willing to do their fair share to help this country that they love. So it's time to build an economy that creates good middle-class jobs in this country. It's time to build an economy that honors the values of hard work and responsibility. It's time to build an economy that lasts. And that's what this jobs bill will help us do. The proposals in the American Jobs Act aren't just a bunch of random investments to create make-work jobs. They're things we have to do if we want to compete with other countries for the best jobs and the newest industries. We have to have the most educated workers. This week I'm going to be hosting the president of South Korea. I had lunch with him in Seoul, South Korea. He told me, I said, what's your biggest problem? He says, the parents are too demanding. I'm having to import teachers because all our kids want to learn English when they're in first grade. So they're hiring teachers in droves at a time when we're laying them off. That doesn't make any sense. We've got to have the best transportation and communications networks in the world. We used to have the best stuff. We used to be the envy of the world. People would come to our countries and they would say, look at the Hoover Dam, look at the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, people go to Beijing Airport and they say, I wish we had an airport like that. We can't compete that way. Playing for second or third or fourth or eighth or 15th place. We've got to support new research and new technology, innovative entrepreneurs, the next generation of manufacturing. Any one of the business leaders here today will tell you that's true. If we want to compete and win in this global economy, if we want this century to be another American century, we can't just go back to an economic model that's based on how much we can borrow, how much debt we can rack up, and how much we can consume. Our prosperity has to be built on what we make and what we sell around the world and on the skills of our workers and the ingenuity of our business people. We have to restore the values that have always made this a great country. Idea of hard work and responsibility that's rewarded. Everybody from Main Street to Wall Street doing their fair share, playing by the same set of rules. And so Pittsburgh, that starts now, and I'm going to need your help. Your senators are voting today on this jobs bill. So this is gut check time. Any senator who votes no should have to look you in the eye and tell you what exactly they're opposed to. These are proposals that have traditionally been bipartisan. Republicans used to want to build roads and bridges. That wasn't just a Democratic idea. We've all believed that education was important. You've got to come, if you're voting no against this bill, and look at a Pittsburgh teacher in the eye and tell them just why they don't deserve to get a paycheck again, and more importantly, be able to transmit all that knowledge to their kids. Come tell the students why they don't deserve their teacher back, and so that now they've got overcrowded classrooms. Or, you know, arts classes or music classes or science classes have been cut back. Come and look at a construction worker here in Pittsburgh or an electrical worker in the eye. Tell them why they shouldn't be out there fixing our bridges or rebuilding our schools and equipping them with the latest science labs or the latest internet connection. Explain why people should have to keep driving their kids across bridges with pieces falling off. Or explain to a small business owner or workers in this community why you'd rather defend tax breaks for the wealthiest few than fight for tax cuts for the middle class. I think they'd have a hard time explaining why they voted no on this bill, other than the fact that I proposed it. And so I realize some Republicans in Washington have said that even if they agreed with the ideas in the American Jobs Act, they're wary of passing it because it would give me a win. Give me a win. This is not about giving me a win. It's why folks are fed up with Washington. This is not about giving anybody a win. It's not about giving Democrats or Republicans a win. It's about giving the American people who are hurting out there a win. It's about giving small businesses, entrepreneurs, and construction workers a win. It's about giving the American people, all of us, together, a win. You know, I was talking to the Jobs Council. By the way, not everybody here has necessarily voted for me. But they're patriots, and they care about their country. And we were talking about how, you know, in normal times, these are all common sense ideas. These aren't radical ideas. These are things that traditionally everybody would be for, particularly at a time of emergency like we're in, where so many people are out of work, and businesses want to see more customers. So for folks outside of Washington, being against something for the sake of politics makes absolutely no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And the next election is 13 months away. The American people don't have the luxury of waiting 13 months. They don't have the luxury of watching Washington go back and forth in the usual fashion when this economy needs to be strengthened dramatically. A lot of folks are living week to week, paycheck to paycheck, even day to day. They need action, and they need action now. They want Congress to do what they were elected to do. Put country ahead of party. Do what's right for our economy. Do what's right for our people. In other words, they want Congress to do your job. So, I've said this to some folks in the other party. I've said, I promise you, we'll still have a lot of stuff to argue about, even if we get this thing done, about the general direction of the country and how we're going to build it, and how we're going to out-educate and out-innovate and out-build other countries around the world. There'll be a lot of time for political debating. But right now, we need to act on behalf of the American people. So for those of you who are in the audience or those of you who are watching, I need you to call, email, tweet, fax, or you can write an old-fashioned letter. I don't know if people still do that. Let Congress know who they work for. Remind them what's at stake when they cast their vote. Tell them that the time for gridlock and games is over, the time for action is now, and tell them to pass this bill. If you want construction workers on the job, pass the bill. If you want teachers back in the classroom, pass the bill. If you want tax cuts for your family and small business owners, pass this bill. If you want our veterans to share in the opportunity that they upheld and they defended, do the right thing. Pass this bill. All right? Now's the time to act. You know, I know that there's a moment where a lot of folks are wondering whether America can move forward together the way it used to. And I'm confident we can. You know, we're not a people who just sit by and watch things happen to us. We shape our own destiny. That's what's always set us apart. We are Americans, and we are tougher than the times we're in right now. We've been through tougher times before. We're bigger than the politics that has been constraining us. You know, we can write our own story. We can do it again. So let's meet this moment. Let's get to work and show the rest of the world just why it is that America is the greatest country on earth. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you. God bless America.
I rise to talk a little bit about the conversation we just had on the floor. There's no question in the state of Tennessee and all across our country, I think the biggest item on anybody's mind is our economy and people having jobs in each of our states. Mr. President, I still believe that the very best thing we can do to create a sound economy in this country is for this deficit committee to do the things that it needs to do in November and December, and for us to show the American people that we have the ability to deal with the big structural issues that our country faces. I believe that with all my heart. I don't think there's a business in our country today that is looking for some sugary stimulus bill that'll be here and gone and leaving us with lots of debt and increased taxes down the road. I believe that. And I guess, Mr. President, I'm disappointed that, again, we're in a situation just like we were last Thursday night where we're really not here to solve problems, neither side, candidly. We're here to have some political stunt take place. I do want to say to my friends on both sides of the aisle, there are numbers of people here that have worked hard to get the free trade agreements in the place that they need to be, and I think we're all expecting them to pass tomorrow. And I think all of us who support these 3 free trade agreements that have been languishing for 995 days, and by the way, that includes lots of senators on both sides of the aisle, I think what we just heard the leader say, that if we were to get on this jobs bill, as he's advocating that we get on today, the likelihood of us actually taking up these free trade agreements and passing them tomorrow is almost nil. I mean, it's not going to happen. We know that there are people who oppose the free trade agreements, and I doubt very seriously we're going to see a unanimous consent to move off a jobs bill that everyone knows is really for show onto something that is serious like the free trade agreements that some people oppose. So I've had lots of conversations with senators on both sides of the aisle over the course of the last 72 hours regarding the need for us to have a real debate on jobs, and I hope that at some point we'll actually have a real debate on a real jobs bill that people really want to pass. I would say that to make that happen, that would actually mean that the Republican leader and the Democrat leader would actually have to sit down and craft a piece of legislation that there's common ground on. Of course, that's not what is happening, and we know that. And for all of us who have things that we've done in life that are productive and we've chosen to come serve our country in this way, we have the ability to be productive in other ways. For all of us to come up here and to watch this continual charade taking place in this body, it's disappointing. It burns up a lot of time, and we accomplish nothing for the American people. So, candidly, Mr. President, I want to have a debate on jobs. I know that, again, moving to the jobs bill tonight would negate the opportunity for the only thing that we've could do recently to actually create jobs, which is passing these 3 free trade agreements, which what they will do is enhance American manufacturers' ability to make and sell things overseas, enhance farmers across our country and their ability to sell their goods overseas. It is a one-way positive street for us because these countries already have low tariff barriers in our own country, so it lowers those barriers for us into their country. So, Mr. President, I'm going to vote against proceeding to the jobs bill. I am disappointed that we continue to do things. We know we have a Republican House, and we know to pass something that's good for this country, that requires a negotiation between all the players. And so each time we bring these bills up that are totally crafted in partisan ways, we know that all we're doing is wasting time. I do have one glimmer of hope, and that is this Deficit Reduction Committee. The fact is that this committee was put together with 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats. So this committee has the ability to do some things that no one can blame the other side. I mean, we're talking about something that's totally split. I'll say one other thing, Mr. President. This committee was put together and was solely conceived by leadership in the United States Senate and the House. So we had 4 people, the leaders of the House and Senate, who conceived of this super committee. And they are the ones that appointed the members to this super committee. They decided who the members of this committee were going to be. They set it up purposely so that it was equally balanced, 6 and 6. And so, candidly, the success of this committee is totally in the hands of our leadership. And so it appears to me that for the first time in a long time, we actually have within leadership's hands totally the ability of something that's great for our country to pass. And anything short of getting to the $1.5 trillion that are laid out in this legislation is totally a failure. And so one thing I'm sure of, Mr. President, that since this was totally set up in a bipartisan way by leadership on the Republican and Democratic side in both the House and Senate, and they chose the members, there's no question in my mind that this is going to be successful or, candidly, be viewed by many as a failure of leadership, candidly. So I'm certain that we're going to get to $1.5 trillion, and I'm hopeful, as are a number of Republicans and Democrats within the Senate here, I think we have a list of over 40, that we're actually going to get to a $3 trillion reduction in the deficit, that we're going to go big, or as some have said, we end up with something that is qualitatively equal to that. Many of us know that trying to get $3 trillion in savings over a 10-year period might be difficult. I still hope it happens. I still think it can happen. I think there's numbers of people in this body that have worked to make that happen. But some people have said, well, you know, maybe we can get some major reforms to Medicare and other kinds of programs in the second 10, and maybe qualitatively that's equally as good. And, Mr. President, I'm certainly willing to look as one senator at all of those things. But in spite of the fact that I think it's a waste of time to be bringing up totally partisan bills in this body, knowing that to become law, they've got to pass the House of Representatives, which means anybody who brings up something in this body today that's totally partisan knows that in advance. That's discouraging to me. It's discouraging to waste time talking about something that we know is never going to become law for campaigns, for House members, Senate members, and the President to campaign on. But at least I'm hopeful that in November and December, we are going to have something big happen, because, again, this is totally in the hands of bipartisan leadership who totally appointed the members, who totally are working with this group. And again, Mr. President, to me, that is the best stimulus we can possibly create for this country, is for small businesses and big businesses, for Republicans and Democrats all across this country to see that this body actually has the ability to do something to create some stability in this country and actually tackle the number one issue that can continue to dissipate our country's standard of living, and that is our inability to deal with debt. So again, to me, that is the greatest job stimulus we can deal with. There's all kinds of regulatory issues and American energy issues and other kinds of things that, to me, we could take up in a true jobs bill, and it's my hope that we'll do that soon. But all I had to hear today, in addition to knowing that this really is a partisan effort, which, again, I hate to see ever taking place on this floor, is the fact is that for any senator who wants to see the 3 free trade agreements that have been languishing, any senator on the Democratic side, any senator on the Republican side, that wants to see the 3 free trade agreements passed into law tomorrow, as has been planned, anybody that wants to see that happen must vote no on the jobs bill being debated, because as the majority leader has stated today, if we begin to debate the jobs bill, that means that we cannot, without unanimous consent, which we know will not happen in this body, We cannot pivot and go to the trade agreement. So, Mr. President, in addition to the fact that I know this is not a serious effort, although I'd love to debate jobs, the fact that I know that if we get on this bill, we cannot pass these free trade agreements in time, I certainly plan to vote no on proceeding to them and hope at a date when we really want to take up a true jobs bill, we'll have a vigorous debate in this body and actually have the ability to pass something that will create jobs. I yield the floor.
Mr. President, this afternoon, the Republican leader of the Senate came to the floor to talk about a vote we're going to have later this afternoon. It's a vote which is historically important. We all know the state of our economy. We're in a position now with 14 million Americans out of work, 9.1% unemployment. Private sector jobs are going up, but so slowly that it really isn't getting us back into the kind of economic progress that we need. We listen monthly as the unemployment statistics come out, and we are reminded of the weakness of our economy. We have to do something. The choices are to allow this economy to languish or to decline or to step up and do something. President Obama has decided that he needs to lead on this issue and bring together Democrats and Republicans for that purpose. He spoke to a joint session of Congress that we attended. It was widely reported. He said, I'm going to put my best ideas on the table, and I invite the Republicans to do the same. We cannot stand idly by and do nothing. The President put his proposal forward. It was very clear what he wanted to do. And he reminded the Republicans that many of the things he proposed were actually ideas they had endorsed in the past. And we waited. And we waited. And at the end of the day, I'm afraid, when this vote is taken, you will find that few, if any, Republican senators will support any effort to try to create jobs in the United States as President Obama has proposed. The President has made his position clear. Those of us who will vote in support of the President's plan have made our positions clear, but the position on the other side of the aisle is becoming increasingly clear as well. And it really comes down to two things. First, the Republicans will not countenance, approve, or even consider $1 more in taxes for the wealthiest people in America. For them, that is unacceptable. It is better to do nothing than to impose $1 more in taxes on people making over $1 million a year. They've said that consistently at every level of the Republican Party. It doesn't reflect the feeling of Republicans in America. 59% of them believe the President's right. It's not unfair to ask those who are making over $1 million a year to share the burden and sacrifice of moving the economy forward. Independents feel strongly about it, and obviously Democrats do as well. The only Republicans who don't share that belief happen to serve in the United States Senate, and they believe that $1 more in taxes to pay for the President's jobs program, if it came from the accounts of people making over $1 million a year, is unfair. So we know they're clear on that position. But there's a second position that the Republicans have taken that is equally clear. They are prepared to oppose any ideas coming from the Obama administration, even ideas that they have conceived and voted for in the past. I asked my staff to take a look at some of the proposals of President Obama in his jobs bill, which will come up later this afternoon, and see what the record was on the Republican side. It's interesting. Senator McConnell and 32 of his Republican colleagues supported President Bush's Economic Stimulus Act of 2008. It included tax rebates for individuals, which we'll find in the Obama plan, tax cuts for small business, which we find in the Obama plan, and no offset, incidentally. It wasn't paid for. It added directly to the deficit. Senator McConnell and 32 of his Republican colleagues voted for that because it had President Bush's name associated with it. I'm afraid most, if not all of them, will vote against this proposal because President Obama has brought it forward. Republicans have supported a payroll tax consistently in the past. Here's what Senator McConnell said on Fox News in January of 2009. If you want a quick answer to the question of what would I do, I'd have a payroll tax holiday, Senator McConnell said, for a year or two that would put taxes in the hands of everybody who has a job, whether they pay income taxes or not. And of course, businesses pay the payroll tax too, so it would be both a business tax cut and an individual tax cut immediately. Mr. President, that's the centerpiece of President Obama's jobs plan. It's a plan that was criticized on the floor this morning by Senator McConnell. The approach the President's taking is exactly what Senator McConnell said when he was speaking in the bosom of the Lodge at Fox News in January of 2009. Republicans have supported federal help to states. I won't go through the list, but they have in the past. And incidentally, it used to be dogmatic that when it came to building infrastructure in America, roads and highways and bridges and ports and airports, it was a bipartisan issue. When the President puts it in his jobs bill, it is rejected. And you know what the Republicans say about the President's jobs bill? You know, we've tried all this before and it didn't work, so let's not try it again. So they are summarily rejecting payroll tax cuts for families that they have supported in the past. They're rejecting tax cuts for businesses to hire the unemployed, even unemployed veterans, which they have supported in the past. They are rejecting the notion that we need to build America's infrastructure for the future of our economy. And they have basically said that when it comes to trying to make this economy move forward, the only thing they want to do is to pass a trade agreement. We'll consider 3 of those trade agreements tomorrow. At least 2, maybe all of them are likely to pass. How quickly do the Republicans think there'll be a turnaround in the economy if we start increasing our trade with Korea, Colombia, or Panama? It may increase trade, but certainly not in the near term, and certainly not to the benefit of 14 million Americans, 14 million Americans who are currently unemployed. So, Mr. President, it comes down to this. We're going to have a vote later this afternoon. It's going to be a vote on President Obama's jobs proposal. He has spoken to it clearly in a joint session of Congress. He has taken his case to the American people, and he has included provisions which the Republicans have historically supported. And I'm afraid they're going to walk away from this. The Republican approach to this is to do nothing, absolutely nothing. Protect millionaires from tax increases, and don't give President Obama a victory. Well, I'll tell you, this is not about a victory for President Obama. It's a victory for unemployed people across America, that we would do something specific, something direct, something that will have a measurable impact in creating jobs. I'm troubled that the Republican approach, as Senator McConnell described it, is one of just say no. That is the Republican answer to the weakness of our economy. He talks about the tax hike that is included in our bill. That tax hike is a surtax on those making over $1 million in income of 5.6%. It is not too much a sacrifice to ask from those who are the most well off in America. When a senator from Kentucky comes and tells us that the earlier stimulus bill failed, I would say to him, remember, over 40% of that bill consisted of tax cuts, something that most Republicans usually support. It also invested in America in ways that will pay off for years to come. For example, the stimulus bill paid for and built a new terminal at the Peoria International Airport. It's a terminal that created jobs today and will serve that community for decades to come. That stimulus bill has also led to the creation of an intermodal center in Bloomington-Normal in downstate Illinois, a proposal that will create jobs now for construction and build for transportation in that community for decades to come. So for that stimulus to be dismissed as not creating results, I'm afraid Senator McConnell needs to journey a little bit north of Kentucky, and we'll show him results in Illinois and all across the United States. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of quorum.
The clerk will call